Hello, my name is Gaella Materne. I am one of the artists represented in the North Carolina Artist Exhibition currently up at the Contemporary Museum of Art. I am a North Carolina Raleigh local artist, primarily a painter, and one of my paintings that I'll be talking to you about today is revolved around a new series that I created dealing with the concept of life and death. This series was actually born out of a necessity of being able to process in a positive way and also showing a form of compassion how our relation is and our perception is of death, which can be quite difficult to understand and to process and to come to grips with. So a little bit about my painting is the whole basis of it is really about opposition. The concept being the largest form, so life and death. In this case, in the painting, the fire that is being nurtured from the skull that the boy is holding, or the subject is holding, is representative of life. So fire is life, and fire is passion, it's creativity, it's really the birth and the beginning of something beautiful, and how that is being translated and transformed from something less beautiful, represented as a skull, or in this case also represented as death. And it's talking a lot about the relationship that life cannot exist without death, and death cannot exist without life, that they are both partners, equal, and going to do this dance eternally until the end of time. The painting has a lot more oppositions represented within it as well. And this can be seen anyway as far as how I use the strokes. So you'll notice that the furthest most background color is actually a very soft, very flat. It can be represented as blue, green, sometimes a little bit closer on the warm tone. And then the next layer is actually a textural one that really resides more in your warmer tones to invite a feeling of compassion, of nurture, especially when you're dealing with such a difficult subject. Going on the next layer, you have the subject, and in the subject I have the brush strokes being very soft again, very controlled and blended. And then one of the topmost layers is, once again, you have the fire, and the fire being the most vibrant of the colors on this painting, not only to continue to represent life in its fullest, but also I bring back some more texture as a top layer of the painting. And you'll notice that based on the layers, I'm utilizing that dual nature again. So I'm going from smooth to texture to smooth to texture, and I'm just reflecting the same idea throughout the whole painting. You will also notice that in those layers, so the backmost layer could be a cool tone, and then the textured layer could represent more of a warm tone, and then you go back to the subject, which, even though it is warm, there's a fair amount of coolness to it, and then back to, of course, the fire, which is nice and warm in your yellow tones. I also like to point out a little fun favorite of mine, that in this painting I designed it so the subject's face, if you covered half the face from where the nose begins, you'll notice that it registers more as a female, and then if you cover the other half, it will register more as a male. And I made very small changes because I wanted to be able to create an illusion that was not as noticeable, but was a little softer, a little hidden inside of the painting itself, to once again represent that dual nature. You have male versus female energy. You've got death versus life. You've got cool versus warm tones, texture versus smooth. Everything that I've designed in this painting was to really represent this opposition. I also created it in a way that the colors that I used really bring out a feeling of nurture. I diluted a lot of these warm tones, these pinks and peaches and yellows, and subdued them in a way that it invokes a sense of nurturing, a sense of understanding, especially with a concept such as this. There is another fun fact that I would like to point out to you. In the background, there is an arc that is created, and it actually almost wants to continue as part of the head that the subject has, but it's slightly offset. And one of the concepts behind this is to represent not only life and death, but represent the circle of life, and that everything will always come back to the same point of which it took off, and that everything that we experience and that we deal with is always going to be this circle, this rotation, and this cycle. So that just about does it with my intention of this painting, some emotional responses. It's going to be very personal, and that is one of the reasons why I left the piece untitled, because I wanted the viewer to really walk away with their own interpretation of the piece, and whether it gives you a feeling, a deeper sense of understanding, maybe even a feeling of peace when it comes to dealing with death, or maybe a note of hope, that through harsh times that there's always hope, and there's always a sense of rebirth, or in this case the fire that's being ignited and nurtured and cared for by the subject. Thank you so much for listening to me. I hope you enjoy the piece.